What will be the city's contribution? Is it $1 million? I've heard from between $1 million and 2.5.
I'm gonna say this slowly because it always gets me said. The city's not giving them any money. We're not putting any money up. What we're asking for is for them to do some investment that they would not otherwise make, and then we will reimburse them through what they generate. And so, when we say the city's making $1 million investment, we are committing future tax revenue if they generate that tax revenue. So they have to generate the tax revenue. If they don't generate the tax revenue, if they don't build it, nothing happens.
Right. So that was the figure I was getting at. It's $1 million. Or is it more?
Yeah, I can check. No, we're just saying using $1 million. It's not exactly $1 million. We're using it as a rough number. So I'll get you.
Okay.
Mayor, on that subject, why is the city council members constantly misinterpreting that particular part of the document? And we go through this every time we talk about that.
Your guess is as good as mine about that. The majority, clearly, strong support on council for economic development activities. The only thing that was different about this particular, well, each 380 agreement is unique. The only thing that was really different about this is it's not actually in the corporate limits of Houston. It's in our ETJ, but it happens to be in an improvement district where we have a long-standing, more than 10-year-old agreement that allows us to collect sales tax, but it hasn't been generating sales tax. There was some debate around the council table as to whether this deal met the but-for requirement. But for the city's agreement to participate, would this deal have gone someplace else? Costco has an option to buy a site in Katy, completely outside our ETJ. It's not that, well, if we don't get this, we're going to go someplace else. They were actually contemplating going someplace else. They had the two sites that they were moving forward on, trying to pick one, and we said, you know, we'd really rather have them here. And we worked with the improvement district to make the site be the one that's actually in the ETJ of Houston, so that it can begin to generate sales tax, which will be generated outside the corporate limits of Houston, but come in to the city of Houston and to be spent in any way we deem fit.
Can you give the location of where the site will be at? Is it up for disclosure?
Oh yeah. It's a big undeveloped site, so I don't know the like a street address, but again, Janice can give you that information. It's north of I-10, outside the city limits of Houston.
Mayor, I had the pleasure of meeting the CEO of Costco a week and a half ago at the Pearland store and then at the Richmond store. And they wanted to get clarification.
And you actually took a picture with the city controller visiting with him.
He told you that?
Yes.
But the CEO was concerned because he was wondering, because so many people in the news media was talking about tax relief and all of that, and he said there was none of that involved. All right, and I wanted to know, did you ever meet with them or have any of the city council members while they were here in town? Did any of them meet with the CEO or his administration from Costco?
I don't know whether any council members met with Costco or not. All contracts are negotiated by the administration. And it is worth pointing out that Costco already has 3 stores inside the corporate limits of Houston. They've never asked for anything. This was a unique situation where they were simply analyzing 2 sites. Do we want the sales tax to go to Katy, or do we want the sales tax to come into the city of Houston? They've really never come to us with their hands out, but when we began to have conversations with them, what would it take to get you to pick this site over the other? Then we got down to a package that council overwhelmingly approved today.
Mayor, what do you think on the police response to the Zimmerman protesters, both in the chambers here, and we've got some calls from the people who were stopped on the freeway saying, why didn't police clear them from the freeway?
I think the police have been entirely appropriate and remarkably restrained. Anytime you have a situation where people are angry and frustrated and they want to vent, you have to give them a little bit of an opportunity to do that. And it is the responsibility of the officers on the scene to take into consideration all of the circumstances confronting them and what is the best way to diffuse that scene. Both the protests here in the council chamber yesterday and the protest on 288, I think they lasted about 15 minutes each, which seems quite reasonable amount of time to allow the police to assess the situation and figure out a peaceful way to resolve those situations.
You know, a couple of the protesters said that they were, I guess, disappointed that there had not been more proactive reaction from the elected city leaders, which is why they came here to try to, I guess, elicit some response from council members, you, whatnot. What do you think about that argument behind why they came and disrupted the meeting?
Houston City Council has no role in a case that happened in Florida under different laws and has been through the legal process. Each one of us has an opinion, and I know a number of council members are personally concerned, and some of those concerns have been expressed in the council chamber, but having a public protest in front of a body that has no jurisdiction seems to me to be a waste of time. But clearly there are a lot of Houstonians who are concerned and want someone in authority to hear that concern, and so they had that opportunity yesterday.
You seem to be willing to give them some leeway to kind of vent their frustrations in a peaceful way. Is that kind of how you're approaching all of this?
Houston has a long history of dealing better with these types of public protests than a lot of other cities, and there's a balance to be achieved. Obviously, our system of laws allows for public demonstrations and protests to take place legally. Blocking a freeway is not a legal exercise of that, and coming in and preventing a council meeting from taking place would not be a legal exercise of that. But how you walk people back from stepping over the line is critical. And we have a police department that I think has been acting in the best interests of all of the citizens of Houston in a very delicate situation.
Can you talk to us about the boarding homes ordinance you guys have been working on, or I guess Ed Gonzalez has been working on a couple of years? I guess it was delayed again today. Do you expect it to pass next week, or what are your thoughts behind that?
Expected it to pass 2 weeks ago, or a week ago. But Councilmember Rodriguez, who is also very concerned about the issue, you're right. Mayor Pro Tem Gonzalez has been a champion of this issue, and this is one of those cases, as I do regularly, where I say to the council member, go work with whoever you need to in the city. I'll make the resources available, bring the ordinance forward, put a lot of work and energy onto it. Councilmember Rodriguez offered an amendment today that none of us had seen until the council meeting had started. And while I think we're all in great sympathy for it, it's fairly specific. And it talks about things like how many fire extinguishers you have and whether the exits are marked, all appropriate. But we want to know what the impact will be on the stakeholders. The fire department was involved in the stakeholders meetings. A number of the good operators of these types of group homes and a number of the enforcement agencies have been in all of these meetings. This was sort of a curveball at the end, but I think we'll quickly in the next week decide if it's going to add any cost to the process and if it's an undue burden. And if it's not, we will accept them all and pass it next week.
Even the people who are supportive of the ordinance, and we've heard from a lot of people who support it, feels like there's not a whole lot of teeth in it.
It's not intended to be the final word on this. And we really have only, for the last couple of years, had the ability under state law to do this kind of regulation. We've never regulated it before. We wanted first to know what the landscape is. How many of these group homes are out there? Who operates them? What do we need to do? We could craft a very detailed ordinance that specifies everything that goes on in these group homes and find out that we have gone completely overboard, or that we've put all our resources in the wrong enforcement area. What we're doing is, we think, a prudent approach, which is let's establish the baseline and determine who's doing what, where, give us the right of entry, and we can really get hard data on where the problem areas are. And maybe it's more on the fire inspection side, maybe it's more on the police inspection side, maybe it's on the that licensing front end where you have felons operating these facilities, or the financial abuses that can take place. We don't know yet, and I don't know that there's really that much data from other cities either. So this is our opportunity to take a big step forward and then get the data, come back and amend as appropriate.
Mayor, one other question on the Costco item. Councilmember Noriega was mentioning the idea of having a plan for how the city directs what incentives, what types of businesses are needed in certain areas.
We do. And if you will recall, the very first, and I challenge my memory here, I think the very first 380 we did was Dean Foods, which was over in Councilmember Rodriguez's district, and it was an existing business that wanted to expand, or they were going to have to move out of that neighborhood. And we did an arrangement which actually involved some land swapping and some other things to make sure we kept a business that employed local residents in a neighborhood. I think the next one we did was a housing project. It was in District A and District H, and Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Gonzalez is still here, but one of them was in his district, the other was in Brent Stardays at the time. And it was getting the infrastructure in to provide hundreds of houses for what I would call workforce housing, not affordable housing, but market housing for firefighters and school teachers and so forth. And so that clearly fit our desire for the economic development of Houston. We have, several of the others have, I know one recently we did was out in District B, far north Houston, and that's in a warehouse area. And we are a growing manufacturing zone. And it was allowed the creation of some new streets that allowed us to put more potential manufacturing sites into an area that wasn't reachable at the time by roads. All of those have contributed in slightly different ways to necessary economic development in Houston. And so those were a little bit on the reactive side, but we also are looking at these proactively as well. And the biggest area of proactive economic incentives that we've tried to put together is in the area of food deserts and trying to attract grocery stores. In fact, Councilmember Adams at the last council meeting asked about why we couldn't do exactly this kind of deal to get grocery stores to come in, because this kind of deal, we're asking the business owner to invest more than they would normally invest. Right now, the reason that their food deserts exist is that the grocery stores don't want to make even their normal investment, and so you couldn't incent them by asking for extra. And so we have, it's a bifurcated plan. We have those areas where we know we need certain things, workforce housing or grocery stores, and then we have the other kind where we are generally trying to do economic development that contributes to the tax base in Houston, and those tend to be more driven from the outside.
Would the city be well served to have a plan to direct in this area? Only in these areas do we need grocery stores. Only in these areas do we need workforce housing. Would it make sense to have that in place beforehand?
We actually have that data. I mean, I can provide you upside down and sideways. If you want to know where the food deserts are, we know where the food deserts are, and we've been working to find the right mechanism to have grocery stores developed there. Do we know where we need the workforce housing for today and tomorrow? Absolutely, which is why one of the very early, in fact, I think the second 380 was done to provide that. in an area that needed it. And we have other areas identified where we'd love to put housing. If you wanted to sit with our economic development folks, they'd be happy to show you on a map great locations to do that. We also know, we have this mapped out, we know where we need where we have growing manufacturing, light industrial zones, and it would be great to put more of that kind of business in. So we, again, it's a bifurcated process. We know what we need where, and we work to develop it, but we also have certain of these deals that just come along, like this Costco opportunity, that's would never be on our regular economic development map because it's not even in the corporate limits of Houston. It actually is only available to us because we had a pre-existing strategic partnership with that area. So we do both. And if you're interested in spending a lot of time with our economic development folks, you know, they love to talk shop. We can keep you busy for the next week.
Mayor, what's the status of the HEB Gulf Game? Is that on track? They had a couple of problems a couple of years ago.
I have no idea about that issue.
You helped with that.
I have no idea about any problems, so I'll have to get some more information.
Mayor, another idea that came up in the budget amendment process was the idea of the city bidding a contract for sidewalk repairs because people are actually responsible for that in front of their homes. What is your perspective on that idea, where we're at with it, and sort of how widespread the problem is in this help address it?
The actual budget amendment was sent to committee because it's going to take a little while to develop the right protocol. I agree with council members. It's foolish to say to a property owner, well, you're responsible for repairing the sidewalk in front of your house. It's actually public right of way. It ultimately belongs to the citizens of Houston. I get that we tell people that they have to mow the grass that belongs in the right of way in front of their house, but repairing a sidewalk is a little bit different. And there are certain standards that have to be met. It makes sense for the city to have a role in that. What council members were interested in was there are lots and lots of neighborhoods that want to do a comprehensive sidewalk repair, and they're willing to pay for it. And so we're trying to marry that desire with a good government policy which says, yeah, the city needs to have a role in this. We shouldn't leave it to each individual property owner to pave the sidewalk in front of their house. But I also don't want to, it goes back to the question earlier, I don't want to create unintended consequences. And so this is a big policy shift for the city. I think it's an appropriate policy shift. As we begin to think in terms of complete streets, and that street is not just from curb to curb, but it also includes the pedestrian realm on either side, we're going to have to redo a lot of different ordinances. So it's going to be going to committee.
Would you envision the city actually having a role in investing in this, or is it just a conduit to have the property owner pay and the city arranges it?
The city invests in sidewalk today, but we don't do it very extensively. We don't, there's a protocol in where we put new sidewalks in. A lot of Houston was developed without sidewalks. If we went down the path of saying the city completely takes over sidewalk work, that might be appropriate, but it would mean, there's a limited pot of money. It would mean that there's less money available for the actual in the roadway work. So that policy discussion will be held appropriately at council committee level.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.